Hello and welcome to Talking Aussie Books, a weekly podcast bringing readers and writers of Australian fiction together. I'm Claudine Tinellis. As an avid reader and passionate advocate for Australian fiction, I make it my mission to spotlight local talent. So if you're looking for your next read or simply want to learn more about the Australian literary scene, this podcast is for you. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and relax. This morning, listeners, I'm chatting to novelist Lowe about her debut novel, The Trivia Night, published by Hodder Stoughton. Ali is a Sydney-based author who works as a journalist. Before moving to Australia 14 years ago, Ali worked in London, where she worked as a features editor for OK magazine and once famously stalked celebrities in Elton John's garden. I had the very great pleasure of meeting Ali at a book launch back in December of 2020 and was delighted to learn about her then upcoming book. Now the book is out in the world and it's a page-turning, rip-snorting read that will have you gasping with possible shock, intrigue and downright unput-down ability. It's a novel about four couples, one reckless night and the aftermath that threatens to rip their seemingly perfect lives apart. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Ali to the podcast today. Hi, Ali.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. Well, I wanted to say congratulations. I absolutely love this book, if you didn't already discern that from my introduction. I raced through it, desperate to know how it all worked out in the end. So tell me about this novel, Ali. What's it all about and what was your inspiration for it?
Okay, so the Trivia Night is about a group of parents at a school trivia night, obviously, a fundraiser, which obviously is kind of integral to Aussie life. It's a rite of passage for primary school parents over here. And these parents, each couple has sort of, things going on within their lives and marriages. They make the reckless decision to partner swap for one night only. And the book kind of explores the ramifications in terms of relationships and marriages, and the clue is that it turns fatal somewhere along the lines, as you know, Claudine.
I do indeed. My goodness. Okay. So, I know that you've probably been asked this question a million times, but was there a school trivia night function that you attended, where you just sat back and said to yourself, I wonder if, ha, ha, ha.
I knew you were going to ask me. No, I like to say at this juncture that it's purely fiction, not based on me at all, although I have been to lots of trivia nights and they do, I think they're a chance for parents to let their hair down a bit, and quite a lot of them are in fancy dress, so people get dressed up and they pretend they're someone else, and they all do get a little bit wild. But no, the idea obviously that it was set at a trivia night was from my own trivia nights, but the idea about including swinging was originated from a conversation I had with a girlfriend who said that there were a couple at her primary school, or a group of people at her children's primary school, who indulged in the old partner swapping, or that was, so rumour had it. And I was quite fascinated with this. My jaw kind of hit the ground and I just thought, gosh, that is the most incredible premise for a book, because it's just open to so much possibility. If something like that happens and it's not meant to, it's not planned, then, there's so much possibility, so much scope for intrigue. What if someone fell in love? What if someone became obsessed? What if someone got pregnant? All these kind of things were kind of bubbling around in my mind. And I was about to embark on the Faber writing a novel course 2 weeks later, and that was the idea I took in with me, having had no idea what I was going to write about, and suddenly this was all over my head and I couldn't stop thinking about the potential for scandal, basically.
Now, I want to talk about the Faber Academy a little bit later, but I wanted to say that I thought this book definitely had a Liane Moriarty-like feel, but what I think also sets this book apart was the way this one night and the couple's actions on this occasion simply highlighted what was going wrong in their lives. As you alluded to a little bit earlier, it all seemed like a bit of harmless fun until there was the potential for someone to be hurt. So, and you've kind of already touched on it, but was it something you consciously wanted to explore?
Well, I wanted them all to have their reasons for going to trivia night and behaving like this. I didn't want it to just be a bunch of parents go to trivia night, get drunk and do something that's going to shatter their lives. I wanted there to be a reason why, because, I would go to trivia night and not do that myself. So, you kind of have to wonder what is going on in these, I would say women's heads, but it's all of them, all of these people's heads, these couples, to make them want to behave like that. And in the case of Zoe, we learn it's because she's trying for a baby, it's not happening, she's angry with her husband, there's a lot of resentment building. With Alice, Alice is very straight-laced, and basically for her it's a chance to explore herself and let her hair down. There's issues within her marriage which you find out as you read the book. And for Amanda, it's very deep rooted, that the issues that she has, which again at the start of the book seem almost quite frivolous and fun, and then as you get to the middle section and the final section, you realize why Amanda has behaved like that, because her marriage is seems to be quite perfect, and they're a very happily married couple, very deeply in love, so why would she do this? But you realize her reasons as the book progresses. Now, I won't give them away, but I wanted there to be these sort of serious reasons why they would be so reckless, basically.
I'm sure this is also another question that you get asked a lot, and I don't want to be indelicate about it, but what research did you have to do to bring the experiences of these couples onto the page?
Well, I have been asked this, and what I've said is that, well, the truth that I didn't go to any clubs or anything like that. I didn't, sit and have coffee with someone who I knew to be in the swinging community or anything like that. I did a lot of Googling. I got a lot of my information about what swingers do from my sister's laptop in Hertfordshire in the UK when I went back to stay with her in June 2019. So she was mortified to find that her search history included things like, what do swingers take to parties, and what are the rules of swinging, and can you do this if you're a swinger? And it got quite grubby, really. So on the search history, so she was like, why did you do that on my computer? But yeah, that was pretty much the research I did for that. At the end, towards the end of the novel, something happens that I needed help from a detective with. So I spoke to a really amazing detective within the Northern Beaches command who gave me lots of advice on how to treat crime scenes and things like that. And she was amazing. So that was my main research from an expert. But yes, the swinging was largely imaginative and from what I gleaned from online sites.
Indeed. Now, I saw a recent Instagram post of yours where I think it might have been a few of your friends got together and bought you a silver key bowl or something like that. So tell me about that. Why is this significant in the context of swinging communities?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a very close group of friends within the school community. I've got 3 children, but 2 of them are at primary school in year 4 and year 5. So we've got, a very close group of friends within the school community. And obviously, inevitably, when the book there started to be a bit of buzz about the book, they were all hideously embarrassed, saying, oh my gosh, why have you put us in this situation? Everyone's going to think we're swingers because we're such good mates and we go camping together and we do this together. And, we're always going for dinners and stuff, and we're good mates. So they were just all quite embarrassed. And I actually had to put a disclaimer at the back of the book saying, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to accept the fact that everyone within our community probably thinks you're swingers now. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, kind of thing. So it's become a bit of a joke. And so I had a little impromptu celebration with friends on Saturday night, and 3 of the girls clubbed together for a beautiful silver salad bowl, and I opened it up and I thought, oh, this is so lovely. And then they were saying, go on, Ali, turn it over. And when I turned it over, it had engraved on the back, keys in, as in keys in the bowl. So I just roared with laughter. It's still making me laugh now. But yes, it's probably not doing much to kind of negate any rumours that might be flying within my community.
To clue listeners in on the significance of the key bowl, why did your friends put that on the underside of the bowl?
Oh, because obviously the book's all about parents who swing, and there's that old kind of adage that, if you're going to a swinging party, you take your car keys and you pop them in a bowl in the middle of the table to show that you're keen. So that was just a bit of a wind up on my behalf. But I've got a good sense of humour, I think, or I like to think I have. So yeah, I did roar with laughter, and it's brilliant. I just love it.
So the book is set in a fictional seaside Sydney suburb, one populated by obvious wealth, if the car's rolling to a stop in the school drop-off zone or anything to go by. So I wanted to ask you, Ali, why there? Why this affluent suburb?
I think I wanted to make the stakes higher, maybe in this affluent suburb, maybe some of the people were, very kind of extreme personalities. I don't know, I just love the idea of, even this beautiful affluent community aren't protected from what happens in every single school, or these kind of, people pitted against one another and, you know, things going wrong. And I just liked the idea of it being slightly sort of Desperate Housewivesy. Everything's so perfect and everything's so wealthy on the surface, but underneath, you know, things going wrong like they do everywhere.
I guess, like, I don't know, when I was reading it, and perhaps this is a bit of a long bow to draw, but do you think that the wealth feeds into the couple's receptiveness to the idea of swinging? The wealthy perhaps have more time to reflect on their innate happiness. I don't know. It's just something that occurred to me.
Maybe because you know, two of the women were working, but they did have a lot of time on their hands, and you know, maybe they were kind of in some respects bored because they have everything they want, and maybe they wanted to spice life up a bit. I mean, really, maybe there is partly that, maybe part of it, but mostly it was the problems that each of these women had deep within themselves that was it. And I suppose wealth doesn't really have an awful lot to do with that. And you know, whether you're bored or not, you still have these problems, and whether you're wealthy or not, you still have these problems. So I guess that was the crux of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've done a fabulous job in capturing the diversity of personalities that populate school communities and the innate competitiveness amongst parents. Is that something you particularly wanted to explore, and why?
I just think the women in the book were quite sort of extreme versions of people that you might see at the school gate. And everything in the trivia night, I guess, was quite extreme. You know, we probably walked down the road and you wouldn't find all these extreme characters in your regular you know, school. And then certainly there aren't sort of these extreme characters in my school community, and everyone's lovely. And, you know, I haven't experienced all this, you know, women pitted against women thing, which, you know, I'd like to point out as the book goes on, you realize that actually these women come together. So it's not a book about women being pitted against each other. It's actually a book about women supporting each other. And that becomes clear at the end. But I do think that what I was doing was taking these small sort of personalities. So the P&C whiz who's, you know, marches around with a clipboard or an iPad, probably not a clipboard anymore. They've probably gone out of fashion from there. You know, and you do have the mum who's always late, who's a bit scatty. You do have the bohemian mum who, like Lara, who kind of waltzes around in her beautiful, you know, Spell and the Gypsy sundress. You know, you have all of these personalities on a small, in a small scale in most schools, but I wanted to kind of take them out, put them on steroids, make them larger than life characters. And I guess in fiction you can do that.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about the fact that each of those characters are harboring deep-seated secrets or, you know, secrets that really kind of threaten their happiness and their futures. Who or what inspired each of these characters, and how did you get inside their heads?
Oh, that's a good question. Amanda, I always knew that she had the problems she has. And I'm kind of loath to sort of give away what they are. I'm terrified about giving anything away.
It's a bit hard, yeah.
But when I was doing my writing course at Faber, I spent a lot of time. I kind of started out with her as my main character, and her problems and her relationship with her mother was sort of, they just came to me quite naturally. I don't know why, not through any personal experience or anything like that, but just I had this idea of a woman whose mother had, you know, issues with alcohol, and, you know, and that they transferred to the child. And I was writing I started off writing quite a serious book with flashbacks from the mother, and, you know, lots of involvement with mother and daughter relationship, and that being a reason for this happening or spiraling. But as time went on, I adopted the other girls, and Zoe really just happened as time went along, and I'd experienced grief myself. 2 years before before starting the course, my brother had passed away, so I was very much in that sort of raw stage of grief where I felt like perhaps writing about it was quite cathartic. So for me, Zoe's character came very, very easily, and it kind of made sense to me that she was grieving all over the place. You know, actually I can't really say, can I? So, you know, that was very easy, and it just came naturally. Alice, I didn't really know what her story was when I started. I wanted someone very buttoned up, who was very, almost slightly businesslike, but who could not admit things to herself, you know, let alone to the reader. Everything was very tightly buttoned. And then it was quite late on that I realized what I wanted to do with her character and how, you know, I wanted her to unfold. And in the end, obviously, Alice has a major reason for doing what she does, which you find out sort of 3/4 of the way through the book. But yeah, she was probably the last one to form.
There is a Machiavellian element to this novel in the form of the character of Victoria. She adds something darker to the story than would otherwise have been the case, doesn't she?
She does. And I kind of felt like I had to have a bit of a villain. I like to think she's a bit of a likable villain. She's not very likable at the start, but I do think in part she redeems herself towards the later stage of the book. But yeah, I definitely felt like there needed to be someone to kind of, well, obviously I needed her for, a major plot point. I needed her to be there to put these women's lives in a spin. But I did really like writing her. I thought she was quite sort of deliciously mean, and I felt like she needed there to be there to kind of whip them all up into a frenzy. And I definitely enjoyed writing her, probably the most, I'd say. Even though she's not a major player, she was definitely fun to write. And I think, she's needed. A good villain's needed in a novel, right?
Indeed, and she certainly does up the stakes in terms of, what the women or what all of the couples are facing.
She does.
Moving along, as mentioned, Ali, you were a journalist and you are a journalist and have been for 20 years, working both here and in London. But did you always want to write a novel?
I did. I probably started numerous first chapters over the years. And in fact, when I got my publishing deal, a friend of mine who I lived with at university, so, oh my gosh, too many years back to count, sent me a message and said, oh my goodness, I remember you writing first chapter or, a couple of chapters of a novel when we lived together. And I just thought, gosh, really? Was I really trying back then? And I think I was, and I think it was always a dream, but it always got put on hold. So it was always something else that would pop up. So, I started working in magazines in London. I worked at OK magazine for 7 years, and I just loved that. And I'm pretty sure that while I was there, I wasn't writing any first chapters because I was just so happy in my job and didn't have time because I was so busy. And then I moved to Australia and worked freelance for a while, probably thought about it, but just thought now's not the right time. And then I had my children, my first two pretty much back to back with 16 months gap. And then I had my third 4 years ago, and it just hadn't come up. And then suddenly it did. When I had my third, I was freelancing, but not freelancing that much, but just doing a little here and there when he was young. And it was about when he was about 6 months old, I think, that I was doing cover stories for the Mossman Daily. And the then editor of the Mossman Daily, Tim McIntyre, sent me a message after I'd submitted some work to him saying, I love the way you write. Have you ever thought about writing a novel? And I kind of was like, oh, I kind of, I was really flattered. And I thought, well, am I good enough? Oh, someone thinks I could, maybe I could. And I kind of started researching novel writing courses, but didn't, act on it. And then Tim commissioned me to interview Jacqueline Moriarty. And I know you would have met Jacqueline, Claudine, and she's absolutely lovely. And I think probably 3/4 through the interview, which was over the phone, she said, she sort of turned it around and was asking me about myself. She's so sweet. And she recommended the Faber writing a novel course to me, which was run then by Catherine Hayman. And I signed up for it and I got a spot. And that was when the trivia night really came into being. I'm quite disciplined, but I need to know where to start. I needed to know where to start. And this course was fantastic. It taught me everything from, like narrative arc, character arc, inciting incident, how to plan a novel. And basically what it really did that was most invaluable to me was that it kick-started me. It got me writing scene after scene after scene, so that I had so many scenes that I could actually work out how they would fit together. And then I did, Faber writing a novel has 2 parts, so part 1 and part 2. So I did part 1, then a break of a couple of months, and then part 2. And so that was 9 months or 8 months. And during that time, I came away with a very, very, very bare bones of this novel. And then after that, I decided to, I was taken on by Catherine Hayman, and she was my mentor for 3 months. And during that time, I sort of tidied up the novel and, talked about things that maybe I could improve on and how I could, embellish it, how I could make it better. And then I ended up at the end of that, probably it was just before our last session. So there were 5 sessions, hour-long sessions, perhaps a session every 3 weeks. It was about an hour, a month before the last one, or a couple of weeks before the last one, that I sent the novel off to London. My agent had requested it. on the back of seeing the Faber anthology. So the Academy releases an anthology with a chapter from everyone, and that had landed on my agent's desk, and she had requested it. So yeah, it went off just before the end of my mentoring sessions.
That is brilliant. I love that story. So tell me about the moment that you knew Hodder and Stoughton were going to publish this book. How did it make you feel?
Oh my goodness. Like nothing else. It was just amazing. I remember it very, very clearly, like you do in, lots of major events in your life. And I think I mentioned that in the book, actually. Amanda calls them Polaroid moments, where you just have a picture in your brain of the way you were, almost like as detailed as what you were wearing when something like this happens. And that was a moment for me. It was a Saturday night, and it was during COVID lockdown. The first one, it was, I think, May 2020 or April, I don't know, around that time. And it was a Saturday night, and I hadn't heard from my agent. I was on submission. I'd been on submission for a good sort of 12 weeks or something, and I hadn't heard from my agent Marina that week. So I just thought, oh, you know what, I can relax. It's the weekend and I'm not going to hear anything, so I can relax. I can not worry for another 2 days, and then on Monday I'll worry again and wonder why I haven't heard anything. So I was kind of decompressing for the weekend, and just sitting down to dinner when the phone rang, and it was Marina. I took it into my baby son's room. He was nearly two at the time, and spoke to her, and she said, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, what?" And she said, "We've got a great offer from Hodder. They'd like to take your book and your second book. And are you keen?" Yes. Oh my goodness, I'm so keen. It was just incredible. And I told my husband, and there was a lot of, "Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my god." Do we imagine that? And then I woke up the next morning, and I turned over and I said to Rob, "Did I dream that? Did that happen?" And he was like, "Yeah, it happened." So yeah, it was a really, really special moment, and I'm really aware of how lucky I am, because it did happen fairly quickly, and that's not always the case. And so I feel really, really lucky that it happened, basically.
Fantastic. So is the book out in the UK as well?
Yes, it's out in the UK in hardback form, with a paperback launch later in the year, to be confirmed.
I love that story, Ali. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for sharing. If there was one thing that you would like readers to take away from this book, what would it be? I
think what I mentioned earlier about women supporting women, that was really important to me. I've got a very close-knit group of girlfriends who mean the absolute world to me, and I didn't want it to be perceived as a book where it's just bitchiness at the school gates and it's just women pitted against each other, because of course there is a bit of that at the beginning of the book, and it is a bit like people looking each other up and down, and there is a bit of this, obviously there's the whole situation between Amanda and Victoria, but I wanted it to ultimately be a heartwarming novel about women supporting women, coming together to solve something, and then at the end of the day putting their differences aside, perhaps, or perhaps not, you'll have to see, but just empowering one another. And that was really important. The second thing that was really important to me in the writing of the book was to have some humor. I wanted to, obviously when I started writing it didn't have the humorous element, it was quite serious, and then I kind of sat back and thought to myself, I don't necessarily want to write a really depressing book about people making one mistake and it having these awful ramifications. I wanted to actually have some fun with it. I wanted to, you've got people in a swinging situation. I wanted to have fun with that. I wanted it to be a bit giggly and a bit, almost a bit slapsticky and a bit silly. And even when it all goes pear-shaped towards the second half of the book, I really wanted it to be fun. I wanted these women who are in this strange situation together to make jokes, and banter. And, that was really important, that it wasn't sort of a straight domestic noir, that it actually had that sort of fun element, because I guess that's kind of me, and I like making jokes, and I like light-hearted reads, and so I think it was inevitable that there was going to be some humor, and hopefully it's worked.
Indeed, it has. Absolutely. Ali, I'm sure that you know that there are many writers who listen to this podcast. So I wanted to ask you, what 3 tips would you offer writers looking for a home for their novel, or someone who wants to write a novel but doesn't know where to start?
3 tips. Okay. Well, my main tip would be and I've said this before, but writing to the end of the book. So start your book, write it to the end. So I think there's a real, I know it's really hard to do because you write a couple of chapters and you think, oh no, that's terrible. I want to go back and rewrite them. And then I'm going to rewrite them a third time and a fourth time. But my advice would be just start. And even if you completely contradict yourself in chapter 12 to chapter 1, don't worry about it now. Stick a post-it note in it, flag it, carry on, write to the end so that you have your skeleton, your first draft. And, you know, nobody's first draft, unless you're really amazing, fluky writer, no one's first draft is perfect. So, and mine certainly wasn't, you know, so keep going, write it, then go back and make the amends. That would be my first tip. My goodness, what would my second one be? Have faith in yourself, because it has to happen to someone, right? It has to, you know, book deals do happen. It is quite easy to kind of get lost in that, especially after the first draft, to get lost in that, oh, I've just written a first draft and it's, you know, I don't feel like it's good enough. Of course it's not, it's a first draft, you know, keep plugging away at it. It is a lot of work, you know, there's a lot of editing involved. There's a lot of wrangling and cutting and pasting and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, but it's got to happen to someone. So I would say keep the faith and just keep working at it. And I guess the third, and this doesn't, you know, always, you know, it's non-essential, but, you know, give it to someone to read. You know, maybe consider doing a course, and there are so many different courses online that you can apply for. They don't have to cost the earth, you know, or maybe having someone read your manuscript, or even if it's just someone who you know loves writing or is a good writer to read your manuscript and give you some pointers. I think those things are all things that really helped me on my journey. So I guess those would be my top three.
Are you working on your second novel right now?
Yes, so I've actually written my second novel. It's called The Running Club and it's out next year. So that is with my publisher at the moment. She's already sent me the first round of edits, and so I'm waiting for the second round. They should come through in a few weeks or a couple of months. And yeah, so that's kind of ready to go. That was part of the 2-book deal, and I've actually written a very, very, very terrible first draft of a third, just because I had this idea and it was burning in my head, and I wanted to get it down. So that's something that I will go back to at some point and work on.
And The Running Club is a standalone novel, got nothing to do with the trivia night?
Nothing to do with the trivia night, but it's set in a similar kind of white picket, almost Desperate Housewives style community where, you know, everything's very shiny on the surface, but underneath there's lots of secrets simmering, and ultimately that turns fatal.
Wow. So. Wait for that one now. Ali, if listeners wanted to learn more about you and your book, or books as the case may be, where could they do that?
Well, I'm on Instagram at ali_Lowe_author, and I have a website which is just aliloweauthor.com. I had to think about that. Yes, that's right. That's definitely right. I am on Facebook and Twitter as well, but I'm terrible Twitterer. I just log in and then realize that I haven't replied to lots of people and then feel bad about it. And I'm a little sporadic on Facebook, but I do love Instagram. So it's so pretty. Love Instagram.
Indeed.
So you can always find me on there.
That's wonderful. Ali, I'm so glad that we've had the chance to connect, and I thoroughly enjoyed the trivia night, and I know my listeners will too. Thank you so very much for joining me on Talking Aussie Books today.
Thank you so much for having me, Claudine. It was really, really fun. Thank you.
That's a wrap, folks. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please drop me a line via my webpage at claudinetinellis.com, via Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. Alternatively, consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Google Podcasts. Until next time, happy reading.